When the heavens ripped open, what fell was not rain, it was judgment. The earth itself groaned. The mountains, they didn't just fall, they burst apart. The deluge spared neither stone nor sanctuary. In the blink of an eye, a world was erased. No land remained, no people, only an endless ocean and the silence of God. Yet amidst that apocalyptic ocean, a single vessel still defied the fury. It was a world where justice had its price and silence was bought with gold. They built monuments to arrogance with their own despair. But amidst a dying world, one man still stood firm, and this is his story. It is the sound of the end and the beginning. The sound of a door sealed not by human hands, but by the hand of God Himself. Inside, a family holds its breath, surrounded by the quiet rustle of every beast of the field and every bird of the air. Outside, humanity has no idea what is about to befall them. What kind of faith does it take to build a sanctuary for a storm no one has ever seen? What must it feel like to be the sole recipient of a divine warning, while the world you know continues its celebration, oblivious to the coming abyss? To understand the Great Flood, we must first understand the world that summoned it. It was not a world condemned by a distant, angry deity. It was a world that broke the very heart of its creator. The book of Genesis tells us, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." Genesis chapter 6 verse 5. Think on those words, every inclination, only evil, all the time. This was not a world of minor trespasses. It was a civilization drowning in its own corruption long before the first drop of rain fell. The air thick with violence. The ground stained with injustice. The very fabric of human relationship torn asunder. And God's reaction was not cold judgment. It was profound grief. The scripture uses a startlingly human word. His heart was deeply troubled. Genesis chapter 6 verse 6. It is the sorrow of a master artist who sees his beautiful creation, his masterpiece, defaced beyond recognition. In the midst of this symphony of chaos, one man's life produced a different sound, a note of harmony. His name was Noah. And God's gaze fell upon him, not as an executioner, but as one searching for a single reason to preserve the song of humanity. Who was this man, Noah? The Bible describes him with three powerful phrases. A righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Genesis chapter 6 verse 9. In a world that had lost its way, Noah held his course. To be righteous in that age meant more than just being a good person. It meant his life was aligned with the divine order, a stark contrast to the twisted inclinations of everyone around him. To be blameless did not mean he was perfect, but that his integrity was whole, his reputation untarnished by the pervasive corruption. But the final phrase is the most intimate. He walked faithfully with God. This was not a distant, formal relationship. It was a daily communion, a continuous conversation. It was this walk that allowed Noah to hear the divine whisper when the rest of the world could only hear the roar of its own depravity. And what God commanded next was a test of that faith unlike any other. So God said to Noah, "I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood." Genesis chapter 6 verse 13 to 14. An ark, a vessel of colossal proportions. The instructions were specific, an architectural blueprint from the divine engineer, 45 feet high, run by McKeldMB, 450 feet long. 3 decks, a roof, a single door in its side, and it was to be coated inside and out with pitcher dark, thick resin to make it waterproof. Imagine the scene. Noah, now a man of 600 years, returns to his family, his hands weathered by a long life, his eyes holding the reflection of a divine sorrow and an impossible task. He must explain to his wife, to his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and to their wives, that everything they know is about to be washed away. He must tell them that they are to become shipbuilders in a dry land, preparing for a flood of cosmic scale. For 120 years, the ark began to take shape. The rhythmic sound of saw against wood, the steady strike of the hammer, became the new pulse of Noah's life. It was a physical testament to an unseen reality. To his neighbors, it must have been the ultimate folly, a monument to madness. We can almost hear their taunts, their laughter echoing across the plains. They saw a man building a boat in the middle of nowhere, warning of a rain that would swallow the mountains. In their world, a world that had likely never seen more than a morning mist, his warnings were the ramblings of a fanatic.
He calls it God's command. I calls it madness.
Hear me. The flood is coming. Repent before it is too late.
He was a preacher of righteousness. The Apostle Peter would later write, to a world that had no interest in being saved. Yet, Noah did not waver. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Genesis chapter 6 verse 22. Then, the second phase of the miracle began. The gathering. From the deepest jungles, the highest mountains, the most distant plains, they came. In pairs, male and female. The lion and the lamb. The serpent and the dove. Not by human effort, not by capture or coercion. They were drawn by an unseen hand, a divine call resonating in their very being. The creatures of the earth, walking in a strange, peaceful procession toward the strange wooden mountain that had grown on the plain. It was a reversal of Eden's corruption. For a moment, a fragile harmony was restored, a preview of the world to come, all converging on this one vessel of hope. Noah and his family guided them in.
Come on now, just a little further.
The scent of gopher wood mingling with the smell of countless animals. The low rumbles, the soft chirps, the quiet slithering, a global menagerie housed within a single, floating sanctuary.
That should hold it.
Good. The last of the grain secured.
What next, Father?
The provisions were stored. The family gathered. They had done everything they were commanded to do. And for 7 days, they waited inside the ark. In silence. In faith. And then it began. On the 7th day, the final piece of the prophecy fell into place. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation." Genesis chapter 7 verse 1. And after they had entered, the animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. Genesis chapter 7 verse 16. That simple, terrifying phrase. The Lord shut him in. The world outside remained unchanged. The sun likely rose as it always had. The scoffers continued to scoff.
Look at him, he thinks he's a prophet! Building a boat in the desert, what a fool! He'll be the laughingstock for generations.
They saw the sealed vessel and perhaps shook their heads one last time at the old man and his foolish dream. But then the sky darkened. Not with the familiar clouds of a passing storm, but with an unnatural, oppressive gloom. The air grew heavy, and the rain began. This was not a cleansing spring shower. The Bible uses language of cosmic upheaval. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Genesis chapter 7 verse 11. It was a world coming undone. Water from above and water from below. The great subterranean oceans, held in check since creation, were now unleashed. The sky, a relentless torrent. It was a decreation. A return to the formless, watery chaos that existed before God first spoke light into being. For 40 days and 40 nights, the deluge was absolute. A constant, deafening roar that drowned out everything else. The cries of those outside, the panicked shouts turning to pleas, would have been swallowed by the cataclysm in moments. Inside the ark, there was only the groaning of the wood and the unceasing thunder of the water. The vessel, once resting on dry land, began to shudder. Then, with a great lurch, it lifted. It began to float. They were adrift on a rising ocean that had once been their home. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. Genesis chapter 7 verse 18. The water kept rising, relentless. It covered the hills. It swamped the valleys. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. Genesis chapter 7 verse 19. Every structure built by human hands, every monument to human pride, was submerged and broken apart. The birds of the sky, the livestock, the wild animals, and all people, every living thing that moved on the face of the earth, perished. The Bible is starkly clear. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground. And the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. Genesis chapter 7 verse 23. For Noah and his family, this was not a triumphant victory. It was a floating tomb on a planet of graves. What did they feel? Relief for their own safety? Or an unimaginable sorrow for the world they had lost, for the people they had known? They were the last remnants of a failed creation, suspended between a dead past and an uncertain future. For 150 days, the water prevailed. The ark, a tiny speck of wood and pitch, a fragile vessel of life, drifted silently on the face of a global ocean. There was no land, no horizon, only the grey sky above and the grey water below. The judgment was complete, and now came the silence. But God did not forget. In the midst of a silent world, covered by the waters of judgment, the Creator remembered His covenant. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark. And He sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Genesis chapter 8 verse 1. He remembered the one righteous man and his family. And God sent a wind, a gentle breath of divine power that began to sweep over the surface of the water. The torrents from the heavens and the springs of the deep were closed. The rain stopped. And slowly, painstakingly, the waters began to recede. The ark, after months of aimless drifting, finally came to rest. Not on a familiar shore, but upon the peaks of the mountains of Ararat. The motion had stopped, but the waiting had not. The world was still a world of water. Noah needed a sign. He needed to know if the earth was ready to receive life again. He first sent out a raven, a strong and resilient bird. It flew back and forth over the vast expanse of water, finding no place to land.
Go now and find land.
It flew back and forth over the vast expanse of water, finding no place to land. Then he sent out a dove, a symbol of peace. But the dove returned, its small feet unable to find a single branch, a single patch of dry ground. The world was not yet ready. Noah waited 7 more days. The silence and the waiting must have been a test of faith in itself.
Oh, my people, what has become of you?
The whisper of hope, a promise of renewal.
He sent the dove out a second time. And this time, it returned in the evening. In its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. A small, green sign of life. But it was everything. A single leaf. It was a promise. It was proof that life had returned to the earth. It was a message from God, delivered by a gentle bird, that the time of judgment was over and the time for new beginnings was at hand. After a final 7 days, Noah sent the dove out once more. This time, it did not return. It had found a home. Finally, after more than a year sealed within the ark, the command came again. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives." Genesis chapter 8 verse 15 to 16. As that great door was opened, the first rays of sunlight in over a year must have been blinding. The air that filled their lungs was cleaner, sharper than any they had ever known. They stepped out not into the world they had left, but onto a raw, clean, and empty planet. A world baptized by water, a world silent, waiting to be filled anew. What is the first act of humanity in this new world? Noah's first instinct was not to build a house or to plant a field. It was to build an altar. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and, taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. Genesis chapter 8 verse 20. His first act was one of worship, of gratitude. And as the aroma of the offering rose to the heavens, God made a promise, not just to Noah, but to all of creation for all time. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans." Even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy all living creatures, as I have done. Genesis chapter 8 verse 21. The sign of this everlasting covenant was set in the clouds. The rainbow, a warrior's bow, hung up, no longer aimed at the earth, but a beautiful, silent promise of God's grace and patience. The story of the flood, therefore, is not just a story of judgment. It is a story of salvation. It's about how God, in the midst of righteous anger and deep sorrow, makes a way for life to continue. And this incredible event casts a long shadow, an echo that is finally understood centuries later. The Apostle Peter, writing to the early church, makes a stunning connection. He speaks of the days of Noah. To those who were disobedient long ago, when God waited patiently in the days of Noah, while the ark was being built, in it only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 20. He then says, "And this water symbolizes baptism that now saves you, also not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ." 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 21. The very water that brought judgment to the world was the instrument of salvation for Noah's family, lifting their ark to safety. In the same way, Peter explains, the waters of baptism are not about washing dirt from the body, but are a pledge to God from a good conscience. It is a symbol of our own death to an old world of sin, and our resurrection into a new life, saved through the ultimate ark of safety, Jesus Christ Himself. The ark was God's plan to save humanity from a world of water. Christ is God's plan to save humanity from a world of sin. The story of Noah is a living fresco of judgment and mercy, of destruction and deliverance, reminding us that even in the darkest storm, God always provides an ark.